Governor is out with his budget, and we're talking about it today. One of the things that we were just talking about was the sin tax on sugar, raising a tax or putting a tax on soda and on candy. Both Senator Mike Moore and Senator Harriett Chandler saying there's no real will among the legislature to do that. People are taxed out. That would mean then, right, Senator Chandler, that there would have to be cuts. And where do those cuts come from? Because as you were just saying a moment ago, nobody wants to cut the good programs that are going on in the state.
Well, I think what you're going to see is, first of all, we're expecting the budget to grow by 3.2%. We're expecting that to happen. That's a little tiny bit of growth.
And is that realistic?
I think it probably is.
Yeah.
Don't you? It's not a big.
I'm going to hold off on that.
All right.
Sure.
It's not a lot, but we see a little growth. I think we're hitting the bottom right now. I think we're going to start to see a bit of pickup, and the pickup will really not begin until we see people getting jobs again. Our unemployment figures have gone down a little tiny bit. We did not go up to 10 the way we were concerned that we would. We have voted in the House and the Senate, both have voted to put a hold on, to freeze our unemployment insurance, so that we're trying to control the costs as best we can. That's a big deal, by the way, when you freeze that. So
it's about $150 savings. It's going. It's actually, the increase I think would be $350, but there's going to be a calculation that's going to increase anyway, so we can't stop, but we can freeze about $156 of the increase. So
yeah, and I think that we're coming out with, the Senate is coming out with, and I read in the paper that the governor is coming out with a plan to try to cut costs, and to do so by merging things. We're actually doing a bill that will merge a number of the quasi autonomous agencies that we have, merge them, remove them totally in some cases. We're also talking about bringing bills together that encourage growth. The governor is talking about giving a tax deduction to companies that hire, which would be wonderful, because it means that, and
well, and the main emphasis of this, if you look at, is small business.
Yeah. And this is your committee,
right,
Senator.
The focus of this is really going to be on small business. The governor announced possible loans and tax incentives. Well, the bill that I guess was released today at 1 o'clock, so I haven't really seen everything in writing. But there's several bills that came out of our committee. One is a impact statement, regulatory impact statement on small business. And actually, Senator Chandler's bill, she filed it, where before a new regulation can be started, an impact statement has to be conducted to determine what the effects on that business sector are going to be. There's also one extending permits. So if you're a contractor that has a permit with a city or town, it allows you to get a 1-year extension. Because now if you've lost funding or financing for some sort of development or project you're working on, why make you go through that whole process again of starting over again? So we're trying to find ways to streamline. In the merging of the economic agencies that Senator Chandler was talking about, from what the initial reports that we're getting, could save about $1 million.
Are these things which could save us money immediately, or these are things down the road? This is for right now. I mean, this would impact this budget.
This is for right now. The freezing of the unemployment insurance is right now. Yeah. We're also going to be looking at, there's 2 health care proposals strictly geared towards small business, that if we can get that in before April or May, before the open enrollment periods, this could have significant savings for small business.
There's also an effort to provide some sort of a loan fund so that small business can get capital. That's been a real problem. And the governor has that. We can't initiate anything that has to do with money, but the governor can, and the House of Representatives can. And the House sounds like they're maybe going along with the governor, and with us, which is wonderful.
Yeah,
that's something that people don't realize. At the Senate, we cannot initiate any legislation that deals with tax incentives, tax increases, or tax reductions. That has to come from the House. So Senator Chandler and I last week were trying to discuss a possible piece of legislation, but we're restricted by that constitutional restriction.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, when you put together these 3 budgets, so we have the governor's budget, the Senate will come up with a budget, and then the House will come up, and then the House will come up with one, and then all 3. How does that actually work so that we end up with the budget, the balanced budget for the state?
The Senate, the governor's budget is the first budget. That's now come out. It came out last week. The House and the Senate will begin next week doing joint hearings. for their budgets. They're different. There are two different budgets there. The House budget will probably come out in April. Ours will come out in May. The House will vote on their budget. We will look at their budget, put some of the things probably in it, some things won't be in it, and we will do our budget. Supposedly, as we get closer to May, we'll be closer to knowing exactly how much money we're going to have. And that's a pretty realistic budget.
And then the cities and towns will make their budgets based on the numbers that you give
Well,
them.
we're trying so hard to get those cherry sheets out early so that they know what to expect.
There is an effort to try to have to try to put together an early local aid resolution amongst the three branches. Where last year last year the revenues were so erratic that it was hard to put a number out. So this year there is an asserted effort to try to get that number out so the cities and towns know what their number is going to be. I mean, out of fairness, I mean, being a selectman for 8 years, I know how important that is to a municipality.
Right. It seems as we talk about some of these cuts and some ways in which the state can really save money going forward to help balance those budgets, what people often look at, though, are they look at the Boston Herald gotcha stories. Here's a guy who's making $170,000 and he got this plum job and he doesn't seem to know anything and he was a friend of a friend and that's how he got the job and why does he have that? How much of that do you think is reality? How much of that do you go after with pension reform that I know that you certainly began the job on last year? And how much is just, it's a gotcha story in the Herald to sell some papers?
It's a gotcha story. I mean, obviously that is not happening to the degree that people think it is. But it's going to make headlines. They're in the business for selling newspapers. They see an appetite for it right now. The economy's horrible. People are suffering. People see that and it's going to sell papers.
Because it was interesting when I asked you about waste and you started talking about, or I asked you about budget cuts, and you started talking about ways in which really these cuts were going to come and save money. I think most people probably thought, oh, they're going to tell me about how they're going to cut all of this waste or all of this fat out of the government, because every year, no matter how much is cut, people think that there's always a lot of fat left.
And it's always someone else's program. Whenever you, it's just like in Shrewsbury now, we're fighting to keep the Glavin Center open.
Right.
It's millions of dollars to operate the facility, developmentally disabled children are there. No one wants that program cut. And I'm trying to fight to keep it open. But in the same breath, you'll have people saying that, other people saying, well, you got to cut the waste and inefficiencies from government. Well, everybody looks at it in tunnel vision of what program that they see the benefit from. They don't see the other programs at the state offices that are a necessity.
You know, everybody would like to think that all of us are enjoying, you know, double dipping and everything else. That's really not, you know, that doesn't happen as a rule. It is the rare exception in which it happens, and boy, does that get the headlines when that rare exception occurs.
We've all taken furlough days, pay cuts, so we're trying to work with the other branch of the legislature or the budget, trying to make sure that we stay fiscally responsible. And it's how do we recommend to people you take pay cuts or pay freezes from the state end if we don't do it.
Right.
I think we've both done that.
Right. Everyone says you got to lead by example. Well, you can't lead if you're taking a pay raise and I'm telling other people to take a pay cut.
Right. Right. Much more about the budget straight ahead here on Wake Up Worcester.